First contact confusion. High Admiral Dralax of the Zolarian Empire stood rigidly on the command deck of the inevitable Conquest, his gold-flecked scales shimmering under the ambient lighting. All six of his eyes, arranged in perfect symmetry across his crest, narrowed as he watched the approaching vessel on the massive view screen. The ship was unlike anything in the Imperial database, bulky, asymmetrical, and adorned with what appeared to be decorative elements rather than functional components. "What manner of spacecraft is that?" he demanded, his secondary arms twitching with irritation, while his primary limbs remained clasped behind his back, as befitted his station. Senior Analyst Krivix cleared her throat nervously. "It appears to be the diplomatic vessel from the newly discovered species, High Admiral. They call themselves humans, and this ship is designated the New Horizons. And they expect to meet the glory of the Zolarian Empire in that." Dralax's neck frill extended in disbelief. "It looks like they welded scrap metal to a cargo hauler and called it a spacecraft." The bridge crew maintained perfect silence. When High Admiral Dralax was in one of his moods, even breathing too loudly could result in reassignment to waste management on the Empire's prison moons. "Establish communication," he ordered, straightening his ceremonial cloak with its 89 medals of conquest. "Let's see what these humans have to say for themselves." The view screen flickered, and the image of a human appeared. The creature had only 2 eyes, a pathetically inadequate number by Zolarian standards, and its skin lacked any proper scales or protective plating. Dralax felt a wave of revulsion. How did such vulnerable creatures survive long enough to develop spaceflight? "Greetings from Earth and the United Terran Alliance." The human's face contorted in what Dralax would later learn was a smile. "I'm Captain Maya Chen of the UTA New Horizons. We're excited to make first contact with your civilization." Dralax puffed up his chest scales in the traditional display of imperial superiority. "I am High Admiral Dralax, 16th voice of Emperor Zorvan the Magnificent, conqueror of the Orion Spiral, destroyer of the Ceti Rebellion, and rightful ruler of 3,000 star systems. You stand at the threshold of the Zolarian Empire, the most powerful civilization in the known galaxy." He paused for effect. This was normally where new species began trembling or displayed appropriate terror. Instead, the human made an odd sound, a series of sharp exhalations. Was it choking? Having some kind of seizure? Sorry, Captain Chen said, waving a hand. "It's just, wow, that's quite a title you've got there. Do you have to say all that every time you introduce yourself? Must make for long meetings." Dralax froze, his neck frill fully extended in shock. Had this insignificant creature just laughed at him? At him, a High Admiral. "Senior Analyst Krivix," he hissed quietly, "what is the weapons capability of the human vessel?" Krivix consulted her datapad. "Minimal, High Admiral. Our scans indicate their shields would collapse under a single volley from our tertiary defense batteries." Dralax relaxed slightly. So these humans were not only disrespectful, but also militarily insignificant. Perhaps this would be a simple conquest after all. "Captain Chen," he said with dangerous calm, "the Zolarian Empire welcomes you. We invite your diplomatic party aboard the inevitable Conquest for formal first contact procedures according to the Imperial Protocol of New Species Integration." "Great," the human replied with inexplicable cheerfulness. "We'll send over our shuttle right away. Looking forward to meeting you face to face, High Admiral Dralax, 16th voice of Emperor. Actually, is it cool if I just call you Dralax? That's a lot to remember." The bridge fell silent. No one had ever suggested shortening a High Admiral's title, not once in the 8,000-year history of the Empire. "Prepare the reception hall," he ordered through clenched teeth, "and alert the Imperial Xenocultural Division. These humans may be the most peculiar species we have ever encountered." Little did he know just how peculiar they would prove to be. The Imperial Reception Hall had been prepared according to the strictest traditions of the Zolarian Empire. Massive banners displaying the conquest of 27 civilizations hung from ceiling to floor. The eternal flame of subjugation burned in its 30-foot ceremonial brazier. 300 Imperial guards stood in perfect formation, their exoskeletons polished to a mirror shine. High Admiral Drellex surveyed the scene with satisfaction. This should adequately impress upon these humans their proper place in the galactic hierarchy, he remarked to Grand Diplomat Verax, whom nodded sagely, his jeweled head crest bobbing with the movement. Indeed, High Admiral. New species typically require a display of our magnificence before negotiations can properly begin, Verax replied, adjusting his ceremonial robes of office. I have prepared the standard terms of vassalage. They are quite generous for a species with such limited technology. The massive doors at the far end of the hall parted, and the human delegation entered. There were 5 of them, dressed in what appeared to be matching dark blue uniforms that lacked any proper ornamentation or indication of hierarchical status. How was one supposed to know which humans to ignore and which to address? Captain Chen led the group, walking with a casual stride that completely disregarded the solemnity of the occasion. Wow, she exclaimed, her voice echoing inappropriately in the sacred hall. This place is something else. Looks like a medieval cathedral had a baby with a Las Vegas casino. The other humans made those strange choking sounds again. Laughing, Dralax reminded himself, while looking around with expressions of apparent amusement rather than awe. Welcome to the heart of the inevitable conquest, Dralax intoned, his voice amplified by the ceremonial acoustics. You stand in the presence of the empire that has ruled this sector for 12 millennia. One of the humans, a tall male with dark skin, whispered something to another, and they both erupted into poorly suppressed snickers. Is something amusing, human? Dralax asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Captain Chen cleared her throat. Sorry, High Admiral. Commander Jackson just pointed out that your Imperial Guards helmets look exactly like Earth kitchen appliances called blenders. It's just a funny coincidence. Grand Diplomat Verax gasped audibly. The Imperial Guard's armor had been designed by Emperor Zorvan himself and was considered the pinnacle of intimidating aesthetics. Silence. Dralax thundered. This is a sacred diplomatic ritual. You will show proper respect or face the consequences. Instead of cowering, Captain Chen raised an eyebrow. Sorry, but where we come from, diplomatic meetings usually start with handshakes and coffee, not threats of consequences. Maybe we should dial it back a notch. Another human, a short female with auburn hair, couldn't contain herself and let out a loud bark of laughter before covering her mouth. What now? Dralax demanded, his patience disintegrating. Nothing, nothing, the woman said, composing herself. It's just, your neck frill fluffs out when you're angry. It's kind of like when our cats get startled. It's cute. Cute. Dralax's voice rose to a pitch that cracked one of the ceremonial crystal goblets. I am a High Admiral of the Zolarian Empire. I have overseen the subjugation of 27 worlds. I am not cute. His outburst only made matters worse. Now all 5 humans were laughing openly, tears streaming down their faces. Grand Diplomat Verax leaned over to Dralax. High Admiral, I believe this meeting is not proceeding according to protocol. Perhaps we should adjourn and reconsider our approach. Dralax, his neck frill fully extended in humiliation, could only nod in stunned agreement. As the humans were escorted back to their shuttle, still struggling to contain their laughter, Dralax couldn't shake the disturbing feeling that somehow the Zolarian Empire had lost a battle that didn't even know it was fighting. Diplomatic disaster. Following the disastrous initial meeting, High Admiral Dralax called an emergency session of the Imperial Cultural Advisory Board. The 9 eldest Zolarian scholars sat around an ancient table carved from the petrified wood of the last sentient forest of Proxima, their withered faces grave with concern. These humans are unlike any species we have encountered, declared Chief Cultural Advisor Trazex, her ancient voice crackling like dry leaves. They seem immune to our traditional methods of intimidation and respect-inducing protocols. Perhaps they are mentally deficient, suggested scholar Marvox, adjusting his ceremonial thinking cap. Many primitive species laugh when confronted with concepts too complex for their underdeveloped brains. Whatever the cause, Dralax said, pacing the chamber while his ceremonial cloak swished dramatically, we must regain control of this diplomatic situation. The Divine Emperor expects this sector to be fully subjugated by the next solar cycle. I recommend the ceremony of Imperial Magnificence, offered Scholar Zildex, the youngest of the advisors at merely 400 years old. No species has ever witnessed it without pledging eternal fealty. And so it was decided. The humans would be invited to observe the grandest, most awe-inspiring ceremony in the Zolarian cultural arsenal. The ceremony of Imperial Magnificence began at precisely the fourth chime of the celestial chronometer. Captain Chen and her crew were positioned in the viewing gallery of the Grand Imperial Cathedral, a space so vast that small clouds had formed near its ceiling. "Welcome to the sacred ritual that has remained unchanged for 10,000 years, announced Grand Ritualist Pexmore. You are privileged to be the first non-vassalized species to witness this display of Zolarian cultural supremacy." The ritual began with 80 imperial vocalists emitting the harmonic drone of ancestral reverence, a sound somewhere between a foghorn and the mating call of a constipated whale. The humans exchanged glances, their lips twitching suspiciously. Next came the procession of historical dominance, where 300 soldiers marched in a pattern so complex it could only be properly appreciated from orbit. Unfortunately, from the humans' ground-level perspective, it appeared they were simply walking in circles while occasionally bumping into each other. Commander Jackson leaned over to Captain Chen. "It's like watching my niece's kindergarten dance recital," he whispered, triggering a wave of poorly concealed snorts from the human delegation. The centerpiece of the ritual was the ascension of the Imperial Proxy Ceremony, where a representative of the Emperor was raised 100 feet in the air, while reciting the 143 virtues of Zolarian superiority. The complex pulley system, operated by 24 devoted acolytes, slowly hoisted ceremonial Minister Vector upward. "Behold," Dralax announced proudly, "the physical manifestation of our cultural advancement." Just as Minister Vector reached the apex of his ascension, a cable slipped. The minister tilted dramatically to one side, his ceremonial headdress, weighing approximately 50 pounds, sliding over his face. In his blind panic, he grabbed for support, accidentally triggering the release of the sacred glitter of dominance. Instead of gracefully showering down, the entire container dumped directly onto the minister's head, creating a sparkling cloud that followed him as he swung wildly back and forth. The humans lost all composure. Captain Chen doubled over, gasping for breath between peals of laughter. Commander Jackson actually fell out of his chair. Communications Officer Rivera had tears streaming down her face as she clutched her sides. "Enough," Dralax roared, his voice echoing throughout the cathedral. "How dare you mock our sacred traditions?" Captain Chen tried to respond, but could only wheeze and gesture apologetically while continuing to laugh. "This is a diplomatic catastrophe," Grand Diplomat Verax whispered urgently. "High Admiral, we must consult the Imperial protocols for handling unprecedented disrespect." Dralax, neck frill fully extended in rage, pointed dramatically at the exit. "Remove them. This cultural exchange is over." As the humans were escorted out, still convulsing with laughter, Dralax could not shake the disturbing feeling that somehow the Zolarian Empire had lost yet another battle that didn't even know it was fighting. On the bridge of the inevitable conquest, Dralax's fury had given way to a cold, calculating anger. These humans had humiliated the Empire twice now. Such disrespect could not stand. "Report," he snapped at Senior Analyst Kravix, who was frantically working at her console. "High Admiral, we're detecting unusual energy readings from the human vessel," she replied, her voice tinged with confusion. "They appear to be scanning us, but that's impossible. Their technology is far too primitive to penetrate our defensive shielding. Dralax narrowed his 6 eyes. Show me. The main view screen displayed a technical readout of the human ship. What had initially appeared to be decorative elements or structural weaknesses now emitted complex energy patterns that somehow bypassed the Empire's most sophisticated counterintelligence measures. How are they doing this? Dralax demanded. Their ship looks like it was assembled from spare parts. Fleet technologist Zarvex approached, his mechanical third eye whirring as it adjusted focus. High Admiral, it appears the humans have disguised their advanced technology within a seemingly crude exterior design. It's quite ingenious, actually. You sound impressed, technologist, Dralax said dangerously. Zarvex's neck frill flattened in submission, merely making an objective observation. High Admiral. The communications officer interrupted. Incoming transmission from the human vessel, High Admiral. Captain Chen appeared on screen, looking surprisingly formal compared to her previous appearances. High Admiral Dralax, despite our cultural differences, we'd like to continue diplomatic relations. Perhaps a technology exchange would help us understand each other better. We've taken the liberty of sending you some basic specifications of our ship's propulsion system as a gesture of goodwill. Dralax gestured for the data to be accepted, fully expecting to see primitive nuclear fusion or perhaps early antimatter containment designs. Instead, the technical schematics that appeared on the screen caused Zarvex to gasp audibly. Is this accurate? Dralax demanded. Zarvex's hands trembled as he analyzed the data. If these specifications are correct, their basic propulsion system utilizes principles of quantum tunneling that our scientists have only theorized about. They've solved the Zarvexian instability problem that has stumped our engineers for centuries. On the screen, Captain Chen smiled innocently. We noticed your ship still used traditional warp technology. Our quantum tunneling drives are much more energy efficient. We'd be happy to help you upgrade your fleet. Help. Upgrade the Imperial fleet. Dralax felt his pride being strangled by the sudden uncomfortable realization that these laughing, disrespectful creatures might actually possess technology beyond the Empire's capabilities. That's generous, he managed to reply. But the Imperial fleet requires no assistance. Captain Chen nodded, her expression neutral but her eyes twinkling with what Dralax now recognized as barely suppressed amusement. Of course, just a friendly offer. By the way, she continued, we've also noticed your ship has some interesting weapon systems. Mind if we send over our security chief, Commander Reyes, to discuss potential mutual defense strategies? Before Dralax could respond, the view widened to show another human standing beside Chen. Commander Reyes nodded professionally, but the real shock was what stood beside her, a fully operational Z-9000 combat droid. The exact model that represented the pinnacle of Zolarian military technology. The exact model that was supposed to be the Empire's most closely guarded secret. We've been manufacturing these for training purposes, Commander Reyes explained casually. Your design is excellent, though we've made a few improvements to the targeting systems. Would you like the schematics? As the transmission ended, Dralax slowly sank into his command chair, a growing sense of dread building in his chest. High Admiral, Krivex whispered, how did they acquire our most classified military technology? Dralax had no answer. For the first time in his 300-year career, he felt something he'd never experienced before: doubt. Testing human limits. 3 days after the disastrous cultural exchange, Dralax stood before the Imperial War Council, his posture perfect despite the mounting pressure bearing down upon his shoulders. The 9 war ministers, each representing a different arm of the Zolarian military machine, regarded him with varying degrees of skepticism and concern. These humans continue to defy explanation, Dralax concluded after presenting his report. They laugh at our traditions, ignore our protocols, and somehow possess technology that rivals or even exceeds our own, all while maintaining the appearance of primitives. War Minister Krex, the oldest and most decorated member of the council, leaned forward, his ancient scales creaking with the movement. "What do you propose, High Admiral? Your diplomatic approach has clearly failed." Drulax had anticipated this question. "I propose a controlled military demonstration. Not an attack. We still know too little about their true capabilities, but a show of force that will make clear the consequences of disrespect to the Empire." "You mean to frighten them into compliance?" asked Minister Zovril, her cybernetic eye whirring as it adjusted focus. "Precisely. We will deploy the 7th Battle Group to conduct maneuvers near their vessel. Nothing overtly hostile, but enough to demonstrate our overwhelming military superiority." After brief deliberation, the War Council approved his plan. As Drulax left the chamber, War Minister Krex pulled him aside. "Be careful, High Admiral," the ancient warrior warned, his voice like grinding stones. "I have conquered 17 species in my long life, and I have learned one universal truth. Those who laugh in the face of power either know something you don't, or they have nothing to lose. Both possibilities should concern you deeply." The 7th Battle Group deployed with typical Zolarian precision. 60 warships arranged in the Imperial Spearhead formation surrounded the lone human vessel, maintaining a distance that was respectful yet unmistakably threatening. The formation was designed to impress upon lesser species the futility of resistance, a lesson written in the cold void of space with the Empire's most powerful warships. On the bridge of the inevitable conquest, Drulax watched with satisfaction as the maneuvers proceeded flawlessly. Each ship moved in perfect synchronization, engines glowing with controlled power as they executed the complex patterns that had broken the will of countless civilizations before. "The humans are hailing us, High Admiral," reported the communications officer. On screen, Drulax commanded, straightening his posture. This time, he would not allow the humans to unsettle them. Captain Chen appeared, looking remarkably calm given the armada surrounding her vessel. "Good morning, High Admiral. That's quite the impressive display you've arranged. Are we celebrating something?" Drulax blinked all 6 eyes in sequence, a Zolarian expression of disbelief. Was she truly going to pretend this was some kind of celebration, rather than an obvious show of military might? "Captain Chen," he began, measuring his words carefully, "the Zolarian Empire wishes to ensure that you fully comprehend the significance of our continued interactions. The ships you see represent merely 1/40th of our total military strength in this sector alone. They're very shiny," Chen replied with a smile. "We particularly like the formation. Very artistic." Before Drulax could respond to this maddening casualness, Senior Analyst Kravix approached with obvious alarm. "High Admiral," she whispered urgently, "we're detecting multiple new energy signatures. They appear to be emerging from hyperspace." "Impossible," Drulax hissed. "There are no other human ships in this sector." As if in direct contradiction to his words, space rippled around the 7th Battle Group. 5 sleek vessels, each approximately twice the size of the New Horizons, materialized in perfect formation around the Zolarian fleet. Unlike the seemingly cobbled-together appearance of the diplomatic vessel, these ships were clearly built for war, their hulls smooth and predatory, bristling with what appeared to be weapon systems of unfamiliar design. "Captain Chen," Drulax said, fighting to keep his voice steady, "explain the presence of these vessels immediately." Chen's expression remained friendly, but there was a new edge to her smile. "Oh, those are just a few friends who happen to be in the neighborhood. I hope you don't mind that I invited them to watch your lovely demonstration. They're part of the Terran Defense Fleet. Captain Rodriguez of the Intrepid, Captain Singh of the Dauntless, Captain Okafor of the Defiant, Captain Nakamura of the Relentless, and Captain Kim of the Indomitable." As she named each ship, its captain appeared in a small screen beside her, each offering a casual greeting, as if they were attending a social gathering rather than a potential military confrontation. "You concealed the existence of your military vessels," Drulax accused, his neck frill extending slightly despite his best efforts at control. "Not at all," Chen replied innocently. "You never asked if we had other ships. Besides, these aren't even our military vessels. They're just patrol ships. Our actual military vessels are much larger and, well, more intimidating. Would you like us to call some of those in as well? The implications were clear. If these were merely patrol ships, then what did their actual warships look like? And how many more could they call in if needed? That will not be necessary, Drulax replied stiffly. Our demonstration is complete. Wonderful, Chen exclaimed. Since we're all here, would you like to see a demonstration of our own? Nothing threatening, of course, just a little something we call precision microjumping. It's quite pretty to watch. Before Drulax could refuse, the 5 human vessels began to move. Unlike the stately, predictable maneuvers of the Solarian ships, the human vessels seemed to flicker in and out of reality, appearing and disappearing in split-second intervals, each time in a completely different position. The effect was dizzying, like watching solid matter turn to lightning. How are they moving like that? War Minister Zovril demanded, having joined Drulax on the bridge. Our tracking systems can barely register their positions. Unknown, Minister, replied Fleet Technologist Zarvex, his voice hushed with what sounded disturbingly like awe. They appear to be making thousands of micro-jumps through hyperspace, each one precisely calculated to avoid collisions. The computational power required would be enormous. As suddenly as it had begun, the display ended. The 5 human vessels appeared in a perfect pentagonal formation around the New Horizons, as if they had never moved at all. Well, that was fun, Captain Chen said brightly. Thank you for inviting us to this little exchange, High Admiral. I think we've all learned something valuable today, don't you? As the transmission ended, Drulax and War Minister Zovril exchanged glances. Order the 7th Battle Group to return to standard patrol positions, Drulax said quietly, and convene an emergency session of the full Imperial Council. I believe we need to reassess our approach to human integration into the Empire. As the Zolarian ships began their withdrawal, Drulax couldn't help but notice that they suddenly seemed much less impressive than they had just an hour before. The Alliance proposal. The Imperial Council chamber fell silent as Drulax concluded his report. 43 of the Empire's highest-ranking officials, ministers, admirals, diplomats, and scientists, sat in stunned disbelief around the massive obsidian table. Emperor Zorvan's holographic projection, transmitted from the throne world 50 light-years away, flickered slightly as the ancient ruler leaned forward. Let me understand this clearly, High Admiral. The Emperor's voice resonated through the chamber. You believe these humans possess technology that equals or exceeds our own, despite their apparent lack of imperial organization or proper respect for galactic hierarchy. Yes, Divine Emperor, Drulax confirmed, keeping his neck frill perfectly flat in deference. Their casual attitude appears to be a cultural trait rather than a deliberate insult. More concerning is their military capability, which they revealed only when prompted by our own show of force. Grand Diplomat Verax cleared his throat nervously. The diplomatic approach has failed, Divine One. The humans seem immune to our traditional methods of intimidation and cultural domination, and direct military action. The Emperor inquired, his 6 eyes narrowing. War Minister Krex answered, his ancient voice carrying the weight of centuries of conquest. Inadvisable, Divine Emperor. Their micro-jumping technology alone represents a tactical advantage we cannot currently counter. A military confrontation would be unpredictable. Unpredictable. In the 8,000-year history of the Zolarian Empire, war had never been unpredictable. It had always been a simple equation. Imperial might apply to lesser civilizations equaled subjugation. The very notion of uncertainty sent ripples of unease through the assembled council. Emperor Zorvan's hologram flickered as he rose from his throne. Then what do you propose? The Zolarian Empire does not retreat. It does not compromise. It conquers. An uncomfortable silence filled the chamber. No one dared suggest the unthinkable, that perhaps, for the first time, Conquest might not be the answer. Divine Emperor, if I may speak. All eyes turned to the source of the voice. Junior Diplomat Silva, barely 150 years old, and attending her first Imperial Council as an observer, had risen from her seat at the far end of the table. Protocol dictated that junior officials speak only when directly addressed by the Emperor, yet here she was, breaking one of the Empire's oldest traditions. Before anyone could object, Emperor Zorvin gestured for her to continue, curiosity temporarily overriding protocol. Divine Emperor, Honored Council. Silva began, her voice steady despite the weight of attention upon her. Perhaps we are approaching this situation from the wrong perspective. For 8 millennia, the Empire has encountered species that we could either intimidate or overpower. The humans represent something new, a species that cannot be intimidated and might not be easily conquered. She paused, gathering courage for her next words. I propose a radical alternative. Instead of attempting to force the humans into our existing imperial framework, perhaps we should consider an alliance. The chamber erupted in outraged hisses and extended neck frills. Alliance? With a species that laughed at imperial tradition. Preposterous. Emperor Zorvin raised a hand, and silence immediately fell. Explain your reasoning, Junior Diplomat. Silva activated the chamber's holographic display. I have analyzed all available data on human culture and technology. Their apparent disregard for formality and hierarchy does not indicate weakness, but rather a different kind of strength. They value adaptability, individual initiative, and innovation over tradition and rigid structures. The display showed images from the human ship, crew members collaborating casually across rank, the surprisingly advanced technology disguised beneath simple exteriors, the unexpected efficiency of their seemingly chaotic organization. Their technological development reflects this cultural approach. They advance not through careful, centralized planning as we do, but through rapid iteration, constant questioning, and a willingness to discard ideas that don't work. The result is technology that develops in unexpected directions and often leapfrogs conventional advancement paths. She switched the display to show the human ships performing their micro-jumping maneuvers. We could spend a century trying to replicate this capability, or we could simply trade for it. Trade. War Minister Zovril scoffed. The Empire does not trade. It takes. With respect, Minister, Silva countered, we cannot take what we cannot defeat. But the humans have already offered to share their technology willingly. They seem to genuinely value cooperation, a concept foreign to our imperial philosophy, but potentially useful. Emperor Zorvin's hologram flickered thoughtfully. You suggest we pretend to ally with these humans, gain access to their technology, and then subjugate them once we understand their capabilities. Silva straightened, her neck frill extending slightly in what some might have considered dangerously close to defiance. No, Divine Emperor, I suggest a genuine alliance. The humans appear to possess technological innovations we lack, while we have resources and established galactic infrastructure they could benefit from. Together, we could be more than either of us are separately. The council chamber fell silent again, but this time with thoughtful consideration rather than shocked outrage. Emperor Zorvin studied the young diplomat for a long moment. High Admiral Dralax, what is your assessment of Junior Diplomat Silva's proposal? Dralax found himself in an unexpected position. His entire career had been built on expanding the Empire through traditional means, diplomacy when possible, force when necessary. The concept of true alliance with another species was alien to him. And yet, the junior diplomat's analysis of human capabilities matches our observations, Divine Emperor. Their technological approach is unorthodox, but undeniably effective. If we cannot easily conquer them, perhaps we should indeed consider alternative approaches. The Emperor's hologram leaned back on his throne, all 6 eyes blinking in sequence, the traditional sign of deep imperial contemplation. Junior Diplomat Silva, your proposal is unprecedented in imperial history. he finally said, his voice echoing through the chamber. And yet, unprecedented situations may require unprecedented solutions. You will lead a new diplomatic mission to these humans. Explore the possibility of this alliance. Discover what they truly want and what they truly offer. He turned his gaze to Drolax. High Admiral, you will accompany her. Your experience will be valuable, and your presence will remind these humans of our military capability, should diplomacy fail. It shall be as you command, Divine Emperor. Drolax and Silva responded in unison, bowing deeply. 1 week later, Drolax found himself back in the Imperial Reception Hall, standing beside Junior Diplomat, now Special Envoy, Silva, as they awaited the arrival of the human delegation. Gone were the intimidating banners of conquest and the overwhelming displays of imperial might. Instead, the hall had been redecorated according to Silva's specifications, still grand but more focused on Solarian artistic and scientific achievements rather than military dominance. Are you certain this approach will work, Special Envoy? Drolax asked quietly, still uncomfortable with the dramatic shift in strategy. Silva adjusted her diplomatic robes, simpler and more practical than the traditional ornate garments. Not certain, High Admiral. But certainty is a luxury we can no longer afford. The humans have shown us that the galaxy is more complex than our imperial philosophy has acknowledged. We must adapt or risk becoming irrelevant. Before Drolax could respond, the doors opened and Captain Chen entered with her diplomatic team. Drolax braced himself for the now familiar human laughter at Solarian customs, but it didn't come. Instead, Chen's eyes widened appreciatively as she took in the transformed hall. Well, this is different, she said, approaching with a genuine smile. I love what you've done with the place. Those are artistic pieces, aren't they? Not conquest trophies. Indeed, Captain. Silva stepped forward, performing a simplified version of the imperial greeting. These represent the artistic achievements of 17 worlds within the Empire. We thought you might appreciate seeing a different aspect of Solarian culture. I absolutely do, Chen replied, examining a delicate crystalline sculpture with obvious appreciation. This is beautiful work. Drolax watched in amazement as Silva guided the humans through the display, explaining the cultural and historical significance of each piece without once mentioning subjugation, dominance, or imperial superiority. Even more surprisingly, the humans responded with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions and offering observations about similarities to Earth art forms. When they finally reached the conference table, round rather than hierarchical, another of Silva's innovations, Captain Chen turned to address both Silva and Drolax. I admit I was skeptical when we received your invitation for a new approach to diplomatic relations, she said candidly. Our previous meetings weren't exactly productive, but this feels different. It is different, Captain, Silva replied. The Solarian Empire has existed for 8,000 years because of our ability to adapt when necessary. You have shown us that perhaps it is time for such an adaptation. Drolax found himself nodding in agreement, surprising even himself. We have been enemies of many species, Captain,